All right, picking up on page 25, we're going to look at creating 3D extrusions in After Effects. So I'd worked ahead and I did a screenshot of what it's going to look like when we get there. I think it's easier to see the final project and product and kind of understand. An extrusion is where we have been working with X and Y space so far, so up, down, left, right. But now we're adding Z space, which is forward and backward, the third dimension in space. So we're making it look as if the words are starting at a certain point and coming out towards us. We're making an extrusion. And where they start, some of them start back further, like the words if we make it, start back further in Z space. The words if we make it, I take that back. They both start back at the same point, but they extrude, they come out to different levels. So they're both starting at the same point in the back on the flat background, but one is coming out at us 2000 pixels, for example, and the other, the making of, is only coming out 1750 pixels. So it's visually stacked a little behind that. Their extrusion point is the same way back in space, if that's making any sense. Hopefully you'll understand it as we're doing it, but these are the extrusions that we're going to be making in After Effects. So this is where we left off. We're going to do some 3D extrusions, and it's a little bit confusing because we have two different kinds of renders. We have the classic 3D and then we have ray traced. Some things work in one but not the other, so we're going to have to turn it on and off and do some nesting of compositions to make it all work together in the end. So the first thing that we need to do is turn all of our layers over here into 3D layers. So we're going to do that by Command A to select all of our layers, and then we're going to turn on the 3D switch, which is this cube icon. And if you did it for one, all were applied because they were all selected, and then you can click to deselect those. Notice up in our composition panel up here at the top right, we have the renderer and it says Classic 3D. Classic 3D does not allow for extrusions, which we're going to do, so we need to click on this and we need to make some changes. In our composition settings right here where it says the renderer unit, we need to change this to Ray Traced 3D, and then we're also going to look at the options. In the options, we have a ray tracing quality. Man, my mouse is weird. Type in 3 if that's not where it is. This is just a range. So a low setting from 1 to 5 will quicken up your RAM previews, but it's going to be a slightly jagged edge to your graphic when it's rendering and showing. A higher number will yield smoother edges, but it's going to take longer. So we want it to render fairly quickly, so a 3 is going to work. And say OK to that. And then back in our composition panel, we're going to say OK again. All right. Our masks no longer are going to be rendering. So the two masks that we had created here, they don't work in the ray tracing. So we're going to deal with that later. Next thing we're going to do is actually apply those extrusions that we saw. So we're going to select the If We Make It text layer, so it's this big one right here. And down in our timeline panel, we're going to twirl open to reveal all of the different properties. If we were still in the classic 3D rendering machine up here, geometry options would be grayed out. So you have to be in ray traced in order for geometry options to work. That being said, twirl that open and you're going to see some options here. The first thing that we're going to set is our extrusion depth. So we're going to click on this, and this is where we're going to type in 2000 and hit enter. And notice that it does the extrusion all in white, not too nice. We're going to change the color of this extrusion. So back down in our timeline panel, right below the If We Make It over to the right, there's a little arrow. It says animate and there's a right arrow. This is what we need to be working with next. So we're going to click on that right arrow and so that's the animate button, and we're going to choose side, color, and then RGB, and we're going to type in a specific color. Notice that it auto-filled with red. So we're going to click on the red color swatch right here, and we're going to change it to an orange. We're going to leave the red number where it is. We're going to change green to 78, and blue is going to stay at 0. And that orange color is what we want, so we say OK. And this makes our extrusion orange. However, it doesn't look like the one I showed you earlier. That's because we applied some transparency to this orange. Right now there isn't any, and it doesn't look the best. So down here we have Animator 1. That was the first time that we hit Animate, and we told it to have a side color of orange. So to the right of Animator 1 we have an Add button and a right arrow, and we're going to click on that, and we're going to affect the property of the side with transparency this time. So property, side, transparency, and in that value we're going to add 50% transparency. And once that processes, you'll notice how the extrusion has a visible white and opaque back face. So it's white and we can't see through it back here. We need to make that orange and transparent also to make it look more realistic. So we're going to go back to Animator 1 and click the Add button again. So we're going to keep affecting these properties right here. So we're going to click the Add button, and we're going to choose Property Back, and we're going to change our back color to an RGB hue. And instead of typing that in, the simple thing we can do is click on the eyedropper right here, and then go and sample the orange swatch right above it, rather than typing in those RGB values. And then you can see it's still perfectly opaque. We can't see through it at all. So we're going to hit the Add button one more time, and we're going to choose Property of the Back, and this time Transparency. And again on this one we're going to type in a transparency of 50%. So right here, 50%, enter. So we now have an extrusion. It starts back on the 0 point, and then in Z space it comes forward 2000 pixels, extrudes out towards us. We're going to apply something similar to our other layer up here, the making of. So select that in your timeline layers, and we're going to twirl it shut and then open again. I didn't need to twirl it shut, it already was, but open again so that we can see all of these options here, so that geometry options shows up. Twirl that open again. And for extrusion on this one, so this one is not going to come out quite as far in Z space. We're going to have it come out 1750, whereas the other one was 2000. They're starting at the same point in the back, but they're coming out at us at different depths. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move this whole layer, this making of, we're going to move it forward in Z space so that the backs of both of them are lined up. So to get that to happen, we need to press the P key to bring about positioning of that layer. And you notice we now have 3 different options. We have the X, the Y, and now we have a Z axis that's currently at 0. So instead of having it be there, we're going to move it forward 250 pixels. And now it comes out from that point. Notice that this has a white extrusion. We want to change it to be like the one we just did with all the orange and the transparencies. And the good thing is that we don't have to go through all that same process. We can kind of copy those modifications and paste them in, which is really helpful. So the one that we like is the Animator 1 in the If We Make It layer. So select the Animator 1 and copy it. Edit, copy, or Command C. Then go back to the layer that we want to target, the making of, and we can do an Edit, Paste, or Command V. And that is going to paste in all of those same extrusion options that we just did. And at this point, this is saving it through page 37, so I'm going to save and stop this video here.